Welcome, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Geeks Gambit, which, of course, is a division of my YouTube channel, Talk and Stalk, which, of course, is devoted to horror. But quite recently, I made the announcement that I'm actually going to be veering into other genres every now and again. The comic book movie genre actually being one genre that I'm going to be focusing on. And so for this episode now, I'm actually going to be ranking all the DCEU films. Now, as I probably said about 15 million times before, I'm a huge DC fan. Admittedly, the DCEU has been pretty hit and miss. It's not all been doom and gloom. They have actually churned out some good films, but at the same time, there hasn't really been a great level of consistency. But I am actually going to be ranking all of the films in the DCEU. As always, these are my personal. This is my personal choice, my personal list. We've all got our own opinions. I'm sure there's going to be some films on here that I probably placed them in some controversial places that some people will disagree with, etc. But as I said, it all comes down to personal preference. And I just want to say as well that I am actually omitting the 2017 Justice League from this list. As far as I'm concerned, there's only one Justice League film, and that is the Snyder Cut, which came out earlier this year. The 2017 film was a butchered mess. It's not the film that it could have been and should have been. Of course, it had Joss Whedon's fingerprints all over it. And as far as I'm concerned, that film doesn't exist anymore. We've got the Justice League that we should have got in the Snyder Cut. So I'm just going to get the ball rolling now. Now, I'll admit this was tough. There were actually two films jostling for the bottom spot for me here. But after some consideration, I'm actually going to put the Suicide Squad at the bottom. This is the 2016 Suicide Squad. Now, hate's a strong word. I don't think Suicide Squad is like one of the worst films ever made or anything like that. But this movie to me was a massive disappointment. This is a film that I feel like had a lot of potential. Unfortunately, I think this film was massively hindered by a lot of studio interference. It was basically butchered by the studio, hindered by rewrites, reshoots, and it's not the film that it could have been and should have been. And in David Ayer's defense, it's not the film that he really set out to make. That said, I think the best film to come from this film is probably Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. I think Amanda Waller was, perfectly cast, or should I say, Viola Davis was perfectly cast as Amanda Waller, who's a bit of a kind of an unsung hero, I feel, in that film. The Suicide Squad, it's in all honesty, as comic book movies go, it's one that really, to me, isn't really that good, which is kind of a shame because I've been reading the Suicide Squad comics for years now, and this is a film that I was really excited for. The trailer I thought was great, but unfortunately, and we got Jared Leto's Joker, which I will admit I did not take to Jared Leto's Joker at all. I commend him for giving us an iteration that we'd never seen before, but at the same time, I just felt as though the performance was too forced. It's like Leto was actually trying. Now, Leto's a great actor, but to me, his iteration of the Joker is just one that was, it just completely fell flat, in all honesty. I did not like the image at all either, which I know is cosmetic. It's more about the performance. But, the tattoos and everything, it just kind of reminded me of, to me, it was something that a Joker fanboy would have, not the Joker himself. So to me, Suicide Squad 2016 is actually at the bottom. Now, only just above that, this was actually vying for the bottom spot. Again, this is a movie that I was massively disappointed with, and I know a lot of people were. And this was Wonder Woman 1984. I liked Wonder Woman. I liked the 2017 film. Obviously, we're going to be getting to that movie soon. This was a film that, to me, for a start, it felt half an hour too long, 2.5 hours long. You know, this film just felt overlong. It felt very lazily written. Now, I think Patty Jenkins did a really good job directing the first film. Patty Jenkins is a capable director. Unfortunately, I don't particularly rate her as a writer, and it just felt this film was really badly written. Um, you know, how Steve Trevor, Chris Pine was, you know, lazily kind of forced into the plot, shoehorned into the plot. It was basically a role reversal of the 2017 film. You know, in that movie, obviously Wonder Woman is the fish out of water. In this film, it's Steve Trevor. The film has its moments. It has its moments here and there, certainly. I did particularly love the flight scene with Wonder Woman. Pedro Pascal, I love the guy. I really feel like he was trying his hardest in this movie. Just unfortunately, the material wasn't very good. And of all the Wonder Woman storylines to draw inspiration from, you know, she's been around since 1941. To use a kind of a, you know, a fantasy story of a wishing stone, it just, yeah. It was a film that really didn't feel like it invested me. And yeah, Wonder Woman 84, a massive disappointment, which is a real shame because it was a movie that I was looking forward to. So yeah, now just above that is Birds of Prey, aka the Harley Quinn show. This isn't really a true Birds of Prey film in my eyes. This is more a Harley Quinn movie. They don't really become the Birds of Prey until the final act of the film. Now, you know, of course, Margot Robbie has cemented herself in that role. Okay, I really do feel like it's quite hard to imagine anyone other than playing Harley Quinn right now. Now, you know, this movie, I will admit, I really enjoyed it when I first watched it. I really enjoyed it. At the same time, I actually watched this for a second time and I struggled to get through it because, to be honest, it's a real, to me, it's a kind of it's an empty shell of a film. Um, you know, there's some great visual aesthetics to the movie. There's, you know, there's some great action sequences, which I believe were courtesy of one of the John Wick choreographers and that. The film has its moments and that. Um, you know, I think Ewan McGregor did a perfectly fine job as Roman Sionis, the Black Mask. I would have liked to have seen him wear the Black Mask for much of the movie, but obviously Ewan McGregor being the big star he is, I don't think they wanted his face covered up too much. Much like Will Smith in 2016 Suicide Squad, being the A-list star that he is, I would have liked to have seen Deadshot actually wear that mask for much more of the film. But so, you know, with Birds of Prey, I mean, it's kind of a fun film for what it is, but it's just a bare bones plot. I would have liked to have seen more of Mary Winstead as Huntress, who did a perfectly fine job. I just would have liked to have seen more. A true Birds of Prey film, obviously, I'm talking as a comic fan here, a true Birds of Prey fan. You know, Batgirl is the founding member, very much a core member of that team. And you know, Harley Quinn was thrown in there presumably for commercial appeal because obviously she's a very commercially viable character, which is ironic because this film really didn't do that well box office wise. Now, the reviews for this film were actually a lot better than Suicide Squad's, but this movie, even though it made a little profit, this wasn't the big box office success that the Suicide Squad was. The Suicide Squad was a summer blockbuster. It was a box office hit, but its reviews weren't too good. The Suicide Squad's reviews, it didn't really go down that well with critics or fans. I actually enjoyed Birds of Prey more, I will admit. Now, I know there's a lot of people that will disagree with that. That's fair enough. But I actually enjoyed it more. But as I said, watching it a second time round, I just don't feel like there's any need to kind of go back to the movie at all. And it is the Harley Quinn show at the end of the day. It is the Harley Quinn show. It's not a true Birds of Prey film. And I know there's a lot of comic fans out there that would really critique it for that. So yeah, but Birds of Prey just above Wonder Woman 1984. Now, next on the list, this could prove to be controversial, actually, and that is Aquaman. I do like Aquaman. I like it. I don't love it, but I like it. You know, to think if you told me a few years ago that Aquaman would actually be the highest grossing film in the DCEU, I would be like, you need to be sectioned, seriously. This film made 1.1 billion at the box office. This was a huge hit. And in all honesty, I mean, it's a DC film. It did feel like it was, you know, I feel like DC was at a point they were trying to like, it feels like it's a Marvel movie. There's certainly, you know, there's a lot of humor in there and that. There certainly are moments of complete and utter cheese. It's a CG fest. It has to be. You know, the film is obviously primarily set underwater. There's no way you're going to do that without making it a big budget CG film. Clearly, by casting Jason Momoa, they're clearly on a mission for, you know, Aquaman to be a character to be taken seriously, because Aquaman, needless to say, is a character that has been the subject of ridicule for decades. You know, personally, I'm an Aquaman fan. I do like Aquaman. I think he's an interesting character if handled well. The new 52, Jeff Johns, did a great job with the character, essentially reinventing the character. You know, I thought Black Manta, my favorite Aquaman villain, was handled well. I thought he was good in the film. The actor's name is actually escaping me. Obviously, we get Patrick Wilson as Orm, the half brother of Arthur Curry. Aquaman was a good film. As I said, there were certainly moments that kind of had me rolling my eyes and thinking to myself, this is really kind of cheesy. But overall, I found it to be a relatively entertaining movie, in all honesty. And it's just good to see kind of a lower tiered character like Aquaman actually achieving some mainstream success. Even though obviously I know there's the comic purists out there, he looks nothing like Aquaman from the comics and all that. I get that, but still. So yeah, Aquaman, and I think it's a perfectly good comic book. I mean, there is one moment in the film that actually really had me kind of rolling my eyes. It's the moment where he gets the trident and he walks out from the waterfall, and obviously he's got the you know, the costume on and that, and it's like he's doing a L'Oreal commercial all in slow-mo and that, and it's kind of like it's the classic kind of hero shot that you'd expect to see in a comic book panel. So I fully get what they were doing there, but it just kind of translates to the big screen kind of in a really kind of cheesy fashion. Now the next movie on the list is, now it kind of pains me to say this actually, because this is the movie this is probably the most anticipated I've ever been for a movie. To say I was excited for this film was putting it mildly, and that's Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I like the movie. I wanted to love it. Just unfortunately, the movie Batman v Superman, you know, the two most iconic superheroes in the history of comic books on screen for the first time ever. That in itself is a big selling point for anyone that's a comic fan or a superhero fan. These are characters that need no introduction whatsoever. There really should have been an organic build-up to this movie. You know, there should have been a build-up. I still firmly believe that Ben Affleck should have probably had a solo Batman film leading up to this movie, possibly a Man of Steel 2, which we'll talk about later, but I firmly don't believe we're ever going to get a Man of Steel 2 now. Again, a missed opportunity, but Batman v Superman is a film I was so excited for. Now, I do like it, okay? I do think there is merit to the movie, but at the same time, it's a film that it's not the movie that it could have been or should have been. I was perfectly happy with the casting of Ben Affleck. I really was. I think Ben Affleck made for a good Batman. I know that might be controversial to say. Some people can't stand him as Batman. I took this as kind of Frank Miller's iteration of the character, you know, a more grizzled Batman, if you will. And you know, the moment it was announced, I kind of saw it. We saw Ben Affleck in the cape and cowl and that, and I'm like, that's Batman. I was really on board with that. And I really like Henry Cavill as Superman as well. Just unfortunately, I think Zack Snyder is great with visuals. Unfortunately, I feel like he really struggles to balance great visuals with good cohesive storytelling. And this film takes a very philosophical stance. I definitely think there's some ideas and it has some real merit to it. But at the same time, I don't feel like it's a film that's as executed anywhere near as well as it could have been. Which is a shame. I mean, Wonder Woman's in the movie. She really didn't need to be. in all honesty. I think Gal Gadot did perfectly well with the little screen time she had, but this is a Batman Superman film. But I think really, to be honest, this film was really to lay the groundwork. It was there to lay the groundwork for the Justice League to come. And in a way, it was basically Warner Brothers, DC's way of kind of playing catch up with Marvel. That's certainly what it felt like. So Batman v Superman, I like it. I don't love it, but there are definitely some aspects of it I really do like. The Ultimate Edition is the version to watch, which is half an hour longer. It's certainly an improvement on the very disjointed theatrical cut. At least this version actually, it actually fills in some of the gaps. It makes the story a little more cohesive. It's a film that has a lot of issues, but as I said, I do like it. But to have Batman and Superman together for the first time ever, this should have been something pretty damn special. Now, the next movie on the list is Shazam, which I actually think is great fun. I actually thought this was a step in the right direction for DC. Shazam's very much a character about wish fulfillment. You know, every kid would want to be a superhero and all that. This is a film that clearly took a lighter tone, if you will. I found this film to be funny, but there was heart there. The movie does have heart. I thought Mark Strong was great as the villain, Dr. Savannah. There's some definite big aesthetics to it. Obviously, Shazam, originally called Captain Marvel until Marvel, filed a lawsuit against DC, and obviously they were forced to change the name. But I thought Shazam was a great, fun, entertaining movie. Now, ideally, I probably would have liked this to have been just a Shazam film. Obviously, we do get the kind of Shazam family in the final act, which, fair enough, but I would have liked it to have been Shazam during the whole course of the movie. But this was a good film. I think it's kind of a shame because I feel like Shazam had the potential, even though it made money, Shazam had the potential to make a lot more money than what it did. Unfortunately, it was released right between Captain Marvel and the biggest movie of the year and one of the biggest films of all time, in fact, which did become the highest grossing film of all time, Avengers Endgame. It was sandwiched right between them two films. And, I think it struggled. I think it struggled financially. It's certainly in comparison to them two movies. But yeah, Shazam, perfectly good film. And again, it's kind of good to see a lesser known character. Obviously, anyone that's a DC comic fan knows Shazam, but among the mainstream, not very well known. To see a character like that propelled, into the mainstream. Now, the next movie on the list is Wonder Woman. Now, I really like Wonder Woman. I might not love it as much as some other people, but it was good to finally see a good female superhero film. We'd never seen one before. We had Supergirl in 1984. Of course, we had Catwoman in 2004 and Elektra in 2005. None of them films were good. I mean, I would actually say Catwoman is actually a strong contender for worst comic book movie of all time. I think it's just a slap in the face to fans of Catwoman. But yeah, with Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot. Now, I will admit, I don't rate her as an actress. Okay, I actually find her acting to be quite wooden. She's incredibly photogenic, of course, but I was very apprehensive about her casting, in all honesty. I felt as though she could ruin the film. She doesn't. I don't feel like she does at all. Even though I don't rate her as an actress, she does bring a degree of physicality to that role. And I do believe she has cemented herself in that role. And, I think Chris Pine as well, I think there's definite chemistry. I think even in Wonder Woman 84, okay, as disappointing as that movie is, I think there's definite chemistry between the two, between Chris Pine and Gal. Wonder Woman, not without its issues, not without its flaws. Patty Jenkins obviously directed. It clearly has Zack Snyder's fingerprints over the film as well, what for the slow-mo and stuff. You can definitely tell that Zack Snyder is involved. There's creative input there. But it definitely has its moments. It has its sequences. Of course, the No Man's Land, I think, is a great sequence in that. Obviously, Zack Snyder, there's a lot of slow-mo and all that. But all in all, I thought it was a good film. I really liked Wonder Woman, and it's just kind of shocking that, I mean, you know, obviously Wonder Woman is a character that's never actually had a big screen film before. And it's kind of shocking when you think she's such an iconic character. She's been around since 1941, and it's taken right up until 2017 for this iconic. Now, obviously, she was pushed very much into the heart of the mainstream by Linda Carter, you know, in the popular late 70s TV show. Obviously, she actually does make a cameo actually in Wonder Woman 1984. But yeah, I thought Wonder Woman, again, it felt like it was a step in the right direction for DC. Obviously, the film was a box office success. Unfortunately, what came out after it was Justice League, which I will admit, I will hold my hands up. I actually thought the 2017 Justice League was going to become the first DC EU film to actually make $1 billion. On paper, it should. I mean, this is a film with Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, but I think clearly at that point, obviously the film wasn't good. And of course, I think people were probably starting to lose faith in the DCEU, in the DC cinematic universe and whatever. But yeah, we're not going to talk about 2017's Justice League anymore. So the next movie on the list, now this is probably going to shock some people. It's The Suicide Squad. I really enjoyed this. This gave me what I wanted from a Suicide Squad film. To me, this film was leaps and bounds ahead of the 2016 film. I think James Gunn actually did a great job with this movie. You know, this film makes great use of its R rating. It's violent. It's pretty damn hardcore. It's a movie that managed to be funny. Obviously, it's a James Gunn film. You know, you're going to get a lot of humor going into it. But for me personally, much of the humor worked. I like the fact that some of these lesser known characters are actually given some real time to shine, that we even get a glimpse, you know, however brief, into some of these characters' backstories, and their characters are fleshed out somewhat. Idris Elba, I think, was a great addition to the cast. Obviously, John Cena, you know, I don't rate him as an actor at all, but much like James Gunn did with Batista in Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, we know that Batista isn't a particularly good actor. You know, he's not, but he's really used for a lot of comedic effect, and it actually works. And that is what he uses John Cena for a lot, I felt, in this movie as well. The back and forth between him and Idris Elba was particularly funny. This was a great fun ride, in all honesty. You know, being the Suicide Squad, there's quite a few deaths. There's quite a few people that do get killed. This was just, as I said, a vast improvement on the 2016 film that we got. So yeah, the Suicide Squad. I'll be honest, I like the look of it, the great visual aesthetics as well. You know, you could tell that James Gunn, I think, was having a lot of fun with this movie, with certain scenes. Not to go into spoilers or anything like that, but there's certain shots and there's certain things that he adds to certain scenes that you could tell. It really felt like I was watching a Suicide Squad comic come to life. Now, the next movie on the list, we're down to the last two now, and that is Man of Steel. Now, Man of Steel, I really like. You know, flaws and all, whatever. This is the movie that started the DCU. You know, back in 2013. I think Henry Cavill is actually great as Superman. I love the fact that this is a different take on the character. You know, this is a realistic depiction of what it would be like for an alien to be on planet Earth. And I love the whole kind of the conflict within himself. You know, obviously Russell Crowe playing his biological father, telling him to be a god, be a hero. His adopted father, Kevin Costner, both Robin Hoods, by the way, actually telling him to hide, lead a normal life, don't expose yourself to the world. And I really like the structure of this film. Obviously, being produced by Christopher Nolan, the structure is very similar to Batman Begins, which is probably my favorite live action Batman movie, in fact. In which we get present, flashback, present. I do like the structure of the film. I think this has some great sequences. I particularly love, you know, Superman's first flight. Like with Batman v Superman, flaws aside and everything, it has a great score, courtesy of Hans Zimmer, who is, without a doubt, one of my favorite composers, if not my favorite. I thought Michael Shannon was great as Zod. Probably still the best villain in the DCEU, in all honesty. I think Michael Shannon's a really good actor that doesn't get enough credit, and a fully believable character, because you can fully understand his motivations in this movie. He's doing it for what he sees to be the greater good, to save his own people, to save his own planet. Um, Obviously, yes, it's a CG fest and all that, if you will. It's very difficult to make a modern day blockbuster without the use of it, etc. But I think Man of Steel is a really good film. And as I said, it's a real shame that we haven't had a Man of Steel 2. I thought a Man of Steel 2 was a dead cert. I really did. But as the years have gone on, it just looks like it's less and less likely. I don't even know if we'll see Henry Cavill back as Superman at any point. If we do, it probably won't even be his own film. Obviously, I do believe there's a chance that he may very well appear in the Black Adam film. There's a possibility of that. But this is Superman, one of the most iconic characters in the history of pop culture. He's a character more than worthy of having his own movie. So to me, Man of Steel, I think is a really good film. It's my favorite Superman film since Superman 1978. Superman 2 is a very good sequel. I like Superman 2. I just liked this new take, I know some people criticized it for being too bleak, too somber, blah, blah, and all that. But, Superman Returns in 2006 was criticised for trying to emulate the Christopher Reeve era. So it's like you can't win. One's, accused of copying and one's being vastly different to the original. So I thought Man of Steel was a good start to a cinematic universe, which unfortunately has kind of lost its way. But yeah, very good film. Now, my number one pick is the Snyder Cut. Justice League, the film that we should have got back in 2017. This is a movie that is a vast improvement, a huge improvement on the 2017 film, of course. I'll be honest, I will confess, I didn't think we were ever going to get this film. Seriously. I honestly thought we'd have more chance of finding a unicorn than we would this movie. I was always a little bit cautious, a little apprehensive about this. But the moment it was announced, I was seriously excited, because obviously what we got in 2017 was not the film that Zack Snyder intended for us to see. Now, do I think Snyder Cut's one of the best films of all time? Hell no. No. I'm just saying, as comic book movies go, I think this is a really good film. This is my personal favourite film in the DCU now. Yes, it's a long film. It's nearly 4 hours. But this is the Justice League. It needs to be epic. The 2017 film was 2 hours long. But gone from this film is all the cringeworthy humour. The characters are fleshed out more. Cyborg is probably the character that actually benefits the most from this cut. Certainly, he's very much, in a way, the heart and soul of the movie. The Flash is not the irritating little jokester that he was in the 2017 film. This is no disrespect to Ezra Miller. At the end of the day, it's the material they had to work with, which, to be quite honest, the humour was very forced, and it felt like it was a DC film trying to be a Marvel film. It was trying to be as accessible to as many people as possible. In this movie, as I say, even with Batman, with Bruce, with more scenes and, changed dialogue, it just changes the whole tone and aesthetics of the movie. Is it perfect? No. It certainly has flaws like most films. Steppenwolf was an improvement. Sure, it's a big CG fest. There's a lot of slow-mo and all that. Getting back to kind of Zack Snyder and stuff, I know that's one thing that he's very often critiqued for. But Steppenwolf looks better, I think. And, his character is fleshed out somewhat. Obviously, in the original 2017, and that he's just a one-note villain. That's it. Darkseid is one of the characters that I was most excited to see in this movie, and I thought Darkseid looked great. Obviously, we don't get that much of him in this film. It's more a tease, if you will, because obviously Darkseid would have been the big villain for Justice League 2, which is a shame, because obviously Justice League 2 is not going to happen. It's not going to happen now, I don't believe. You know, and obviously this film ends with that big tease, but it really felt like I was watching, by the end of this movie, it felt like with the Suicide Squad, getting back to that, it felt like I was watching a cohesive team by the end of the movie, because we've actually spent nearly 4 hours with these characters. You know, the streamlined 2017 film, these characters have to be introduced, thrown together within the space of 2 hours, and it's just ultimately rushed. So I think the Snyder Cut, I mean, there is no reason to ever watch the 2017 Justice League again, in my opinion. Obviously, we get a glimpse of Deathstroke in this as well. And of course, you know, Joker, Jared Leto's Joker, which I'll admit I'm still not a fan of. But just a huge improvement on the movie that we got. You know, there's some real... There's a sense of scope and epic scale to this film. And I will say this as well: the music in this movie, the 2017 film, Danny Elfman, one of the greatest film composers out there, but ultimately his score was completely unmemorable. You know, we don't get Hans Zimmer. I love, speaking of which, actually, before I forget, the Junkie XL theme, Wonder Woman. I absolutely love that music. I love that score. It's very high octane, very adrenaline fueled. But yeah, the music plays a big part in this film as well. There's a sense of grandeur to the movie due to the music. And yeah, it's my personal favorite film in the DCEU. So that's pretty much all I want to say, really, regarding this. So I didn't want to... I could have turned this into probably a 15-hour podcast, but... So yeah, that's all I really want to say. And thanks a lot to everyone that listened. And if you've liked what you've heard, please feel free to subscribe to my channel. All support is massively appreciated. It really does mean a lot. So that's it for now, and take care, and I'll be back again soon.